Master. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Tadadi Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangsha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Okay, so we continue with Sri Isopanisad, and I believe today we're starting with verse 9. If I'm incorrect, then please someone can correct me. So until now, we have been learning about the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that whether he has veins or if he doesn't have veins. And the conclusion is that he's both a person and also impersonal. He's a person and he's also impersonal. He pervades the entire world through his impersonal aspect. And well, maybe I can cover this. So now there's a section. We're starting a section from text 9, 10, and 11, in which we're going to now talk about the result. The Isopanisad very much, you can see every time it talks about the result of this knowledge. Again, path philosophy, right? Philosophy of the Vedas, of the Upanishads, is not just armchair philosophy, but it's path philosophy. It's leading us to a certain goal. So it's now telling us what certain knowledge about the Lord and ignorance about the Lord, where they lead. So ignorance and pseudo knowledge lead to darkness. Real knowledge leads to eternal life. This is called sambandha. That the knowledge or the understanding of our relationship with the Lord, that's called sambandha. Where does that lead? Well, it leads in two directions. Then abhideya is the process by which, or the practical application of that knowledge, or the process by which we establish that relationship with God. The process is learn nescience and transcendental knowledge side by side, which is very interesting. This is something first time you've probably heard after joining the Krishna consciousness movement, that you should learn nescience also And we'll see what that means. That doesn't mean going to the bar and with your video camera and learning what people do there at the bar. No, it doesn't mean that. It means understanding knowledge of this material world and the spiritual world side by side. And this is why we see in the Bhagavatam, in Canto 3, Canto 2, there's so much description about the elements of the material world so that we can understand what we are not. And then simultaneously understand who are we actually. And finally, also in mantra 11, the goal or the prayojan. Prayojan is the goal. Sambandha, abhideya, and prayojan. The prayojan is told that by doing this practice, we transcend birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. So this is actually very nice. It gives you an overview of this next section. So we just learned a lot about Krishna. And this section is telling us how this knowledge establishes our relationship and how we can apply it and what is the result. This is a bird's eye view of the Isopanisad. Kind of actually we've covered a lot, so it's nice to summarize it a little bit, take an overview before we actually go into the details. So you can see this. We covered all these parts. And so now here is the link to previous verses. Having received the complete vision of the Sri Isopanishad in the invocation and mantras 1 to 8, we now receive further guidelines on which types of knowledge to seek and which types of practices to follow, so that we may also realize this vision. So in 8 verses, the full understanding of the Lord is given. And now, which types of knowledge to seek and which types of practices to follow so that we may also realize this vision. We begin with guidelines for knowledge in mantras 9 through 11. The previous 3 mantras have described the Mahabhagavat and his vision of Krishna. Mantra 9 discusses 2 kinds of people who lack knowledge of Krishna, the one that we're doing now, those who are simply ignorant and those who are followers of material scholarship. So those who are mudhas, who are ignorant, and those who are maya aparita jnanas, they have knowledge, but they have material knowledge, thinking it the end all of knowledge. Both kinds of people disregard the Lord's proprietorship and consequently are degraded into the darkest regions of ignorance. And we'll see of these 2 types of people who lack knowledge, or 2 types of lacking knowledge, which one is worse? You can probably already guess, but we will see. So last 3 verses, we talked about the vision of the pure devotee, the vision of knowledge, which includes the vision of Krishna. And in these 3 verses, we are talking about, beginning with this verse on the lack of knowledge. Mantra 9 says that avidya leads to the darkest region of ignorance, but so-called knowledge, vidya, leads to a darker place. So here's the answer to my question. Avidya, or ignorance, leads to darkest region of ignorance, but so-called knowledge, the maya parita jnana, material knowledge, speculative knowledge, leads to even a darker place. Mantra 10 points out that there is a different result from the cultivation of vidya and avidya. And mantra 11 says that we should learn both side by side. So sometimes people say devotees are silos and they are unaware or not in connection with this material world. So, they isolate themselves. No, actually, Radheshyam Prabhu came here a few weeks ago and he was traveling through and he gave a lecture and he says, a devotee does not isolate, the devotee insulates. Right? We insulate ourselves, not isolate ourselves. So the devotee has all knowledge. He knows, he understands the material world also. This is why sometimes it's shocking and amazing that sannyasis who are Naishtik brahmacharis since childhood, they've never had a relationship with a woman in their entire life. They give such nice advice for married couples because they have knowledge, though they don't experience, but they have knowledge of the material life as well and how to see it from a spiritual perspective and how to handle it. Of course, we may go to a grahastha because they may have more, lived knowledge also. But even the sannyasis sometimes give very nice knowledge. Why? Because they have the understanding. They don't have to experience it to understand, but they understand by hearing, by seeing the result of material life. So mantra 9 evaluates ignorance and pseudo-knowledge. Mantra 10 defines knowledge as distinct from both ignorance and pseudo-knowledge. And mantra 11 enjoins us to know matter, to know spirit and matter, both. So the Bhagavatam says, one who knows Krishna's Maya is able to transcend it. We must recognize it, right? Knowing it means recognizing it. One who recognizes Krishna's Maya, understands it, knows it, that person can transcend it. Okay, so mantra 9, here we go. Andam tamaha pravishanti ye vidyam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo Yau vidyayam rata, andam tamaha pravishanti, ye vidyam upasate, tato bhuya evate tamo, yau vidyayam rata. Those who engage in the culture of nescient activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. So this is what we just read. Those who neglect spiritual knowledge enter into darkness. Mantra 9 states that those who neglect spiritual knowledge shall be covered by darkness and ignorance, especially those who actively impede such knowledge. We can feel this covering of darkness or frustration in modern society, where we are so advanced in material knowledge, yet we ignore or even avoid spiritual education. People are more confused as to the purpose of life than ever. Material knowledge is certainly necessary and even beneficial as long as it is engaged in the Lord's service. But when it ignores spiritual life, such material knowledge is just another form of ignorance, which distracts us from our actual goal of realizing our eternal nature as spirit souls. Those who commit the worst harm to society are those who pretend to cultivate spiritual knowledge, but only misinterpret spiritual teachings. So, wow, this is so amazing. So we have these two categories, right? So one is a person who stays in ignorance. They're leading the dark life, just drinking, watching TV, going to sleep. This is Kali Yuga life. But then worse are those who are very, academically advanced, but they're giving material nescience in the veil of spiritual knowledge. And unfortunately, we find many people like this in Kali Yuga. And this is why, this is why sometimes, although externally it looks so beautiful, but sometimes material education, like colleges and universities, are more entangling than someone who's just leading a very, kind of materially focused life. Because at the university, we think we're getting such nice, knowledge, but it's it's convincing people more deeply, intellectually of ignorance. I'll give you one example that, I studied theology, I studied religion at the University of Oxford, and in the course of that went to other universities also. Like, you meet other students at conferences, other scholars, and you'll be surprised that the majority of students who study religion at the university, they become agnostics or atheists. They become atheists. Why? I mean, they're studying religion. At a certain point, there's so much pushback. Why do we teach religion? All these things. But actually, those who know the academia and who are very religious, they're very happy with it because they know that when the students go and they study the academically, uh, um, the academic, understanding or perspective on religion, more than half the time, 80% of the time, they become atheists. And how is that possible? Why is that possible? Because of this reason. They impede spiritual knowledge. The real spiritual knowledge they're not giving. It's not because, well, when they look at it really deeply in depth, they don't find any evidence. No, it's uh, it's written in such a way. The arguments are made in such a way to actually impede the real spiritual knowledge, the real obvious and illuminating, facts to become covered, the teachings to become, you know, um, to become hidden, and the dry, technical, speculative things to brought out, to be focused on. Uh, but when it ignores spiritual life, such material knowledge is just another form of ignorance. So one feels very knowledgeable, and because one feels very knowledgeable and proud, one one ignores spiritual life, and their knowledge becomes another form of ignorance, which distracts us from our actual goal of realizing our eternal nature as spirit souls. Those who commit the worst harm to society are those who pretend to cultivate spiritual knowledge, but only misinterpret scriptural teachings. They pretend to cultivate spiritual knowledge. Another version of this we see in India. The gurus and the yogis, the false gurus and yogis there, they teach something, or the New Age philosophers here in America, they teach some spirituality, but it's just spirituality, a make good, feel good spirituality that's pretending to be spirituality. And as a result, they cause harm in society. Because once people get into the hands of these pseudo gurus who just give some spirituality that's enough to make them feel good, but don't actually give them something, then it's twice as hard to pull them away from it. And this is our own personal experience, even in our family, that when people, approach these gurus, they make you feel they're giving something spiritual, so people become very attached to them, and then but there's very little spiritual progress because they're not asking us to actually do the real thing that Krishna is telling us to do, which is surrender to him, surrender to Krishna. This mantra offers a comparative study of vidya and avidya. Avidya or ignorance is undoubtedly dangerous, but vidya or knowledge is even more dangerous when mistaken or misguided. This mantra of Sri Isopanisad is more applicable today than at any time in the past. Modern civilization has advanced considerably in the field of mass education, but the result is that people are more unhappy than ever before because of the stress placed on material advancement to the exclusion of the most important part of life, the spiritual aspect. Prabhupada's words are so nice. Modern society has advanced considerably in the field of mass education, but the result is that people are more unhappy than ever before because of the stress placed on material advancement to the exclusion of the most important part of life, the spiritual aspect. Just see, I mean, like, it's so true. It can't be more true. Like, people go for so much education and they never, in all the college classes, if a professor teaches something about real spiritual practice, they're not allowed, right? You can't do it. And the students, they never encountered, after so many years of sincere study, let me pursue knowledge. It's it's so mind-numbing, so much just information and all these things that they become more and more frustrated, more and more disturbed and unhappy. The invocation explained the essence of real knowledge, that the Supreme Lord is the owner and controller of everything. The absence of that is ignorance. So that is knowledge means knowledge of Krishna as the Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvalokam Heshwaram. And if we don't have that knowledge, then that is ignorance. Killers of the soul, the general description in Mantra 3, the specifics are given here. So what is the killer of the soul? It means being materially ignorant and materially knowledgeable. So materially ignorant up here in this picture you see, and materially knowledgeable. Wow, look at all these formulas. And people think then they start to hate knowledge. It's like um, um, so troublesome. There's one Chinese Taoist philosopher, Lao Tzu, who was the founder of Taoism. And he said, give up education and put an end to your troubles. Even he realized that this modern education, it's just a big trouble. I mean, all these exams after exams. When I look back, I think, how did I do that? Now I could never do it again. And then I feel sorry for the kids. Like, okay, now they're going to go through this years of life just wasted, year after year, exam after exam. And practically speaking, what do we gain? All those exams, 99% of it, like 99%, we don't remember. We don't remember a single thing of those formulas. I did so many calculus classes. Now I cannot do calculus. I don't remember it. We do so many classes on this and that. And what do we gain from it? We should think, what is the real knowledge that we can develop it? Imagine that same time we spend in in studying the scriptures, the Bhagavatam, and investing in our spiritual life. Where would we be today? Right? Even 2% of that we do, and we feel such spiritual inspiration. Right? We read Bhagavatam for an hour a week. We feel so much inspiration. If we did it 40 hours a week in place of our school or job, how much we would make advancement. So, of course, we can't leave all of these things. If we've done it, we can engage in Krishna's service to some degree. But now, whatever time we have left, we should focus on the development of spiritual knowledge, on the real spiritual knowledge. And enough, we do mature life enough to keep the body and soul together, to get a nice job, to make things go on. If Krishna wants us to make a millionaire, he'll make us a millionaire. But if he doesn't want to, then it won't happen. So we shouldn't strive too hard for material advancement, but focus on the development of the soul rather than killing the soul through this material knowledge. In the Bhagavad Gita 7:15, this is the Mudha Naradhama Maya Paritagyana and Asram Bhavam Ashrita. These are the 4 types of people who do not surrender to Krishna. So Krishna talks, so this is what I was mentioning. These are the people who are nescients, 4 types of nescients. And then this mantra is categorizing them, those who have so-called knowledge, in 2 parts. So it's categorizing this third one. So the first part is the other 3 pretty much, but those who have so-called knowledge, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, into 2 parts. One is Veda Vadarata. These people misinterpret the Vedas for sense gratification. And the second is Maya Paritagyana, as those who teach Mayavad philosophy. Both these types are examples. So Mayavad philosophy, this is why Prabhupada is always, smashing it, because it's more dangerous than atheism. Because atheistic people, okay, they don't want spiritual life. The way the material world is set up, when you don't have spiritual life, you really suffer. And one day you turn towards God. right? One day, a materialistic person has to turn towards God because the nature of the world is that there's so much suffering. And you become frustrated over time, you start to seek something higher. But the problem with the Maya Paritagyanas is that once people turn to spiritual life, right? After all of this suffering in this world and the school of hard knocks and finally coming to spiritual life, then when they turn to spiritual life, then they give them something else in place of spiritual life. They give them false gold in place of the gold. People are now finally ready. They're giving up the gasoline to come to the jeweler's shop, to come to get the gold. But then the jeweler is selling, what do they call false gold? There's a specific term for it. Um, I'm forgetting it, it's escaping me. But there's a term for false gold. And they're giving them that. And so they're giving them false spiritual life. So then they become more bewildered and frustrated that where should I turn to? So this is like you could say Maya's final snare, the ultimate snare. Prabhupada called Mayavad philosophy as the Maya's ultimate snare. Because it's like you come to spiritual life, but then that spiritual life tells you that rather than surrendering to God, actually you are God. Right? So they come to the point of wanting to find out God and surrender to Him. But they tell them, actually, you are God. No need to surrender. And this is another form of atheism. Materialists are also trying to be God. And now, spiritual life, these Mayavadis, they're also trying to be God. So they should not teach this false philosophy. Be aware of false knowledge. It is more dangerous than ignorance. George Bernard Shaw. So here he's saying, in general, as not even spiritual knowledge, even material knowledge, right? A teacher who has little knowledge is more dangerous than a teacher who doesn't have that knowledge. They'll say, I don't know this, but I'll tell you what I know. But a teacher who's misguiding, who has false knowledge, or he's giving incorrect knowledge is more dangerous. Ignorance and pseudo-knowledge, the advancement of learning by a godless people is as dangerous as a valuable jewel on the hood of a cobra. A cobra decorated with a valuable jewel is more dangerous than one not decorated. This is Prabhupada's example. He's making this point in the purport. Advancement of learning by a godless people is as dangerous as a jewel on the hood of a cobra, or a cobra with a jewel. Why is that? Because a normal snake, when you see it, you're just going to run away. But a cobra that has a jewel on his head, someone's going to see the shiny jewel and want to touch it or get that jewel. But when they get it, then they get bitten. Then as soon as they try to touch, the snake bites them. So, pseudo knowledge, pseudo spiritual knowledge, false teachers, false gurus, and their knowledge is like a jewel on the head of a cobra. Because people are coming to them for spiritual life. They're seeing, okay, there's some spirituality there. And people, sometimes they sacrifice their life for it. Women will leave their homes to join these ashrams and these temples and these groups of sadhus. And then they're actually being, then taken advantage of, or they join it and they don't find any spiritual, real practice there. They'll join it and then they'll find out that actually all we have to do is meditate and become God. Wolves are dangerous, and wolves dressed as sheep are even more dangerous. Yes, it's fool's gold. Thank you. Yes, that's the word, fool's gold. Wolves are dangerous, and wolves dressed as sheep are even more dangerous. And this is why all of our acharyas, it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance day a few days ago. And what did they do? They spent their life battling and fighting against Sahaja groups, pseudo Sahaja groups. Why is ignorance dangerous? We will think and do things which will lead to suffering and make it difficult to come to the right path. So if someone tells us that, uh, that it's okay to be a spiritual person and also um, drink or eat meat, then we'll do those things and then become further entangled, and then it'll be difficult to find the right path. The walls of the room are ignorance. Why is pseudo knowledge worse than ignorance? The walls of the room are ignorance. The glass window is pseudo knowledge. Mm. And the open door is knowledge. A bird trying to get out is likely to waste time and energy on the glass window and therefore not even attempt to find the open door. So this is such a nice metaphor that a bird who's trying to get out of an enclosed space, a house, um, is trying to find where the door is. Now it's a big house, so it takes time, and she has all these walls, right? And so she has to see, okay, this wall is there, and so where is the opening? And though the walls will take some time to maneuver through to find the actual door, that will be relatively quicker. So we see in our life that the material life is like this, and then finally we're like, okay, I want the way out of this material world. But then when the bird comes to the glass window, she'll think that that's the opening because she sees the light there, but it's not the opening, and she'll peck at it and spend so much time trying to pursue that false path. In the same way, this is such an apt analogy because in the same way, those who are seeking something real, they do eventually reach the goal. But because of the pseudo teachings and pseudo philosophies, they waste so much time with these pseudo movements before realizing that this is not the opening. This is not going to take me anywhere. Through their own practice, they realize this. Oops. I lost my screen here. So they miss, uh, they get a long detour, and they're not able to see that opening because they're stuck at the window. Okay, where's the screen again? Yes. So last slide of this one. Oops. Ignorance and pseudo-knowledge, nationalism and modern universities. What are some examples of this pseudo-knowledge? Nationalism and modern universities. These do not pretend to be spiritual, but they do claim to give knowledge which will lead to a happy life. People also waste so much time on nationalism, right? Srila Prabhupada himself was going down that route. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur stopped him. This seems spiritual. This seems to elevate us from human society. But what is the use of this nationalism? Has your nation, has your Indian nationhood, Indian identity saved you from death? Has it saved you from suffering? And modern universities, has all of your education saved you from this? They are pretending to give you knowledge, but they are not giving you the real spiritual knowledge. Okay, so very deep verse here. Very important one. It's nice for especially those of us from the Indian background, because from our background and our training, we're very impressed by education, right? Everyone has to get really educated. All the kids have to be very, very educated, all the way to PhD, all these things. I myself, right? We did that. But then um, Prabhupada, on many occasions, he made it clear that that's good. It's important to do something. But to the devotees who joined, he didn't tell them to go back and get his education. Those who were in the middle of it, he said, you finish it, like Bhakti Sarup Damodar Maharaj. Those who had it, he said, you utilize it. But he never really pushed them to go back and get big, big degrees, because he said, whatever you have, engage it in Krishna's service. Because ultimately purity is the force, right? We may become very PhD, all these things, but if we lose our spiritual life in the process, what will we be able to accomplish? Even our own selves, we won't be able to liberate. On the other hand, if we have the knowledge of the Bhagavatam and we are leading a spiritual life, a pure life, purity is the force, we will be able to influence and change the greatest scholars in the world. So even from a Yukta Vairagya perspective, if we have it, we can engage it. But to go back and spend years cultivating material knowledge just to engage in Krishna's service is not necessary for Yukta Vairagya. Just like His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj, he was living in Los Angeles, in California, and near Santa Barbara, and there he influenced one of the greatest scholars on Hinduism. And she's like his disciple, and she chants and all these things. So he didn't become a PhD, big material scholar. He comes from a very wealthy family, millionaire family. But he was able to influence by his purity. And so many others like this. He was always connecting with the elite, and he would, by his purity, connect with them. My own Guru Maharaj Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, the Prime Minister of India, in a speech that he gave some months ago at the new temple in Mumbai, Kargar Temple, he said, today I'm missing His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj. He influenced him so deeply that they had like a friendly, close relationship, and he was missing him. So we may spend our life trying to become the prime minister, and we will be unsuccessful. 99% chance will be unsuccessful, because it's not just hard work, it's also luck, karma, that people come in such big positions. However, if we become a pure devotee of the Lord, then we can influence those people who are in that position, for sure. Not 99% or not only 5% chance or 10% chance. We can actually influence those people very deeply. Of course, we should do education. Everyone, needs to do whatever they need to do to get a job and, maintain their family. But we should not have faith in it. We should have faith in Krishna, and we should have faith in the Bhagavatam. Okay, so let's see, mantra 10. Let's do it quickly, and then we'll have discussion. Anya devahur vidyaya nyadahur vidyaya iti shushrumadhirana yenastad vichachakshire. The wise have explained that one result is derived from the culture of knowledge, and that a different result is obtained from the culture of nescience. Mantra 10. One result from cultivating spiritual knowledge, another from neglecting it. See, it's a culture. Knowledge is not just information. Developing the culture of knowledge versus the culture of nescience. Mantra 9. Describe the results of cultivating ignorance and false knowledge. And Mantra 10 explains that true knowledge brings a different result than either of these. It also emphasizes the need to take guidance from a dhira in the act of discriminating between real and illusory knowledge. Dhira dhira jana priyo priya karo. The Goswamis were dear to both the dhiras and the adhiras. Why? Because they were perfectly dhira. And I was listening to a class by Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada was saying that first become a dhira, which means undisturbed. And the example he gives is that of Lord Shiva. That Lord Shiva is an ascetic. An ascetic, they meditate naked. Yet his young wife Parvati approaches him. She worships him, yet he is undisturbed. And therefore he is dhira, completely undisturbed by the senses. That is real spiritual knowledge. And one has to take guidance of such a dhira. In Mantra 10, we hear from authorities that a certain result is derived from culturing spiritual knowledge, and a different result is derived from neglecting such knowledge. Because knowledge of the soul is not being taught in the modern education, there's animosity in all social, political, and religious fields today. As we attempt to dominate this material nature more and more, not considering its creator or purpose, the result is we fall more and more into fighting and war. Along with cultivating knowledge of this material world, we must also acquire spiritual knowledge from the self-realized souls who understand our common eternal spiritual nature in relation to the Supreme Lord. Actually, this idea is there in every religious tradition in its pure form. For example, in Christianity, in Saint Augustine, he also realized that we need some basic material knowledge. So he made a little book for the Christians of that time. Material knowledge, these are the things that you need to know. It's like, how do you, fix, broken watch? How do you do this? Like basic things. He said, just learn this one book, and then the rest of the time, cultivate spiritual life. Study the Bible, study the works of the saints, etc., etc. So along with cultivating knowledge of the material world, we must acquire spiritual knowledge from the self-realized souls and how much that elevates our life. What else in life do we have other than to do this? As advised in chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita, 13:8 to 12, one should culture knowledge in the following way. One should become a perfect gentleman and learn to give proper respect to others. One should not pose himself as a religionist simply for name and fame. One should not become a source of anxiety to others by the actions of his body, by the thoughts of his mind, or by his words. One should learn forbearance, even in the face of provocation from others. One should learn to avoid duplicity in his dealings with others. One should search out a bona fide spiritual master who can lead him gradually to the stage of spiritual realization. And one must submit himself to such a spiritual master, render him service, and ask relevant questions. So nice. You see, most of these, what is knowledge, the culture of knowledge, we see are ethical principles, right? One should become a perfect gentleman and learn to offer proper respect to others. First principle of knowledge, knowing how to give proper respect to others. One should not pursue name and fame, especially as a religionist. You want to become famous, become, materially advanced, become famous, but don't use Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada says. Don't use spiritual life to become famous. Let Krishna make you famous, if he so desires. One should not become a source of anxiety to others, right? By thoughts, actions, all these things. One should learn forbearance. One should avoid duplicity. These are all, spiritual principles and also ethical principles. We should not be duplicitous in our dealings with others. Straightforward. We just say the truth as much as possible. Well, always, but we say it as much as possible. We should be truthful always. One should search out a bona fide spiritual master. And then this one, then once you have these qualities, you can really surrender to a spiritual master and take guidance and make advancement. And actually, very interesting, just last night, I was talking to one very senior devotee in India, and we were discussing how, advancing in spiritual life, when again it says, surrender to a spiritual master, ask him questions, rise in spiritual life. This doesn't just mean the Diksha relationship. We think, okay, my Diksha guru is not there, so it's all lost. Or even if he's there, I'm not in contact with him, and only when I'm in contact with him, I actually get real spiritual knowledge. But our line in ISKCON, in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, is primarily a Shiksha line, meaning like Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was not the Diksha disciple of Jagannath Das Babaji. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji was not the Diksha disciple of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but they were connected by Shiksha. And their Shiksha relationship was deeper than the Diksha relationships they had with their Diksha gurus. So through Shiksha, through instruction, we can connect very deeply with a spiritual master, even if they're not our Diksha guru. But if they're representing that same Diksha guru or similar, or they have the same mood as Prabhupada, they can uplift us on the spiritual level. They can actually be that connection for us in a very deep way. And very interestingly, then we were discussing this. Also, another devotee who is considering initiation, the person they're attracted to is not giving initiation, but they're receiving so much spiritual knowledge from them. And that is a true relationship, because we have a Shiksha relationship. We have a Shiksha line. We can take instruction from a spiritual master. And as a result of that, connect with the Parampara through Shiksha also. Right? Through the instruction, we are actually, they're our Shiksha Guru. Through instruction, they're also our Guru. One who's instructing us is also our Guru, not simply Diksha. Sometimes we put too much emphasis on Diksha, that it's just the initiation part that matters, or that is my primary connection. But in our Acharya and our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, we see that Shiksha is also, is in fact given more importance. And all of us have that relationship most primarily with Srila Prabhupada. And that's how we're connected in that way. Now, everyone who took Shiksha also took Diksha in our line. It's not that they just had a Shiksha relationship. So it's also wrong to say, well, I'm connected to Prabhupada because of that reason, but then I don't need to take Diksha from a living spiritual master. No, we have to take Diksha also. That's why we have to search out a Diksha Guru also. And we have to search out a Shiksha Guru also if our Diksha Guru is not our main Shiksha Guru. Prabhupada in one purport says that, in the Bhagavatam says that generally your main Shiksha Guru becomes your Diksha Guru. Generally, oftentimes, the person you get instruction from becomes your Diksha Guru. But that's not always the case, because the Diksha Guru may not be so available, or they may leave at a certain point from this world. So then the Shiksha with them, and also the Shiksha from the other living spiritual masters, that becomes very key in our spiritual development. Number 7, in terms of cultivating knowledge, in order to approach the platform of self-realization, one must follow the regulated principles enjoined in the revealed scriptures. One must be fixed in the tenets of the revealed scriptures. One should completely refrain from practices which are detrimental to the interest of self-realization. One should not accept more than he requires for the maintenance of the body. One should not falsely identify himself with the gross material body, nor should one consider those who are related to his body to be his own. One should always remember that as long as he has a material body, he must face the miseries of repeated birth, old age, disease, and death.
Yeah, I'm in a meeting right now. Can we talk after 30 minutes, please? Okay. Thank you.
So, just one second. So, one must be fixed in the tenets of the revealed scriptures. One should completely refrain from practices which are detrimental to the interest of self-realization. One should not accept more than he requires for the maintenance of the body. This is a element of knowledge, to not accept more. So even if you have it, not to accept if you don't need it. One should not falsely identify himself with the gross material body, nor should one consider those who are related to his body to be his own. One should always remember that as long as he has a material body, he must face the miseries of repeated birth, old age, disease, and death. There's no use in making plans to get rid of these miseries of the material body. The best course is to find out the means by which one may regain his spiritual identity. So, this one point, one should not accept more than he requires for the material body. Prabhupada, the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Lord Chaitanya actually says very few times, he says in different places, that for householders, charity is the most important spiritual principle. And let's remember, Lord Chaitanya is, the incarnation of the holy name. He's spreading the Yuga Dharma. But he makes this point that for householders, so if we don't accept more than we require for the maintenance of the body, then where is the rest of it going that we have? It should go in offering charity voluntarily, whatever we can do. Similarly, I was just listening to a class from Prabhupada. He was speaking on this verse, Yagya Dana Tapa Shaucham, that these three things, Yagya Dana Tapa Shaucham, yeah, I think, that these three things, Yagya Dana and Tapa, Krishna is saying, should never be given up. And then he says that for the householder, Yagya and Tapa are not so practical because he's living in a house with children. So he says for the householder, makes the same point. The most important of these three is dana or charity, because we are earning money. That is why we are living in a family, working hard. We're getting this with our very hard, work and hard earned money. And so to give that up is the most difficult because we work so hard for it. And if we give that for Krishna's service, then it becomes the most glorious thing. And that's why charity is said, because we're most attached to it, that's why charity is said to be most important for the householder. So tomorrow is Bhadra Purnima. It's the appearance of Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is the day to give the Srimad Bhagavatam as a gift to someone. Because it said that tomorrow, if you give the Bhagavatam as a gift to someone, you go back to Golok Dham. Tomorrow, Bhadra Purnima. So we should all make a point to sponsor as many sets as we can to give to others. Why do one and be on the edge? Do hundreds so that Krishna becomes very pleased. And that, of course, requires some charity because there's some expense associated with the publication and the distribution of the Bhagavatam. So we should not hold back. We should do it at our own temple centers as much as we can, because this is necessary for our spiritual development, so that we don't accept more than what we need. If we give it away, we won't accept more than what we need. If we give it away in service to Krishna, but at least one we should do. And charity begins at home. If we or a family member doesn't have a Bhagavatam, we should give it to them. We should give it to them. If they're in India, we can order one for them. If they're in America, give it to them. And this is the most important charity, the gift of transcendental knowledge. The most important charity is Srimad Bhagavatam. And tomorrow's the day. It's the one day of the year that we get special bonus points. Bhagavatam says in the 11th canto, you go straight back to Golok Vrindavan just by giving this Bhagavatam as a gift to someone on that day. So how important it is. We must do it. And that is knowledge. That is a culture of knowledge. So the reason we're going through this is Prabhupada is mentioning this verse is talking about culture of knowledge. So he's telling us this is what knowledge is. Develop this. So the list continues. One should not be attached to more than the necessities of life required for spiritual advancement. One should not be more attached to wife, children, and home than the revealed scriptures ordain. Again, same point in 13. One should not be more attached than to the necessity of life than required for spiritual advancement. 14, similar thing. 15, one should not be happy or distressed over desirables and undesirables, knowing that such feelings are just created by the mind. One should become an unalloyed devotee of the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. And serve him with rapt attention. One should develop a liking for residence in a secluded place with a calm and quiet atmosphere, favorable for spiritual culture, and one should avoid congested places where non-devotees congregate. So big cities are good for preaching. That's the only reason we should be there. Otherwise, it's good to be in a secluded place. I heard something very wonderful a few days ago uh, in a Bhagavatam class, that the Goswamis of Vrindavan, they're living under a different tree every day. And the Goswamis were so renounced that even amongst themselves, they wouldn't stay together. Like they would meet for discussion on Krishna, but then they're living independently. Because even in our spiritual lives, we can get attached to our sangha, our group, our this, our that. We can get attached to that sense of this is my group, and that's an attachment. So the Goswamis especially described they were living alone under different trees, just depending upon Krishna. Because when you live together, there's every chance that you'll start making groups and parties and liking and disliking. There's every chance of conflicts, of disturbances. So they would live alone, absorbed in Krishna. And then they would congregate where devotees were congregating to glorify Krishna. So a devotee has a liking, actually, to being to some degree in seclusion. Of course, we cannot imitate them because we're not on that level, but it kind of shows us that even within spiritual life, we should avoid any form of groupism, because that is another form of a designation. We can, we can make some framework for the purpose of service, but fundamentally, we are not this group or that group. We are servants of Krishna. For the practical execution of devotional service, we need to know, okay, how do we operate? And we need, some sort of structure. But ultimately, our connection is with Krishna and his devotees, and each soul with another soul. So we should be in a calm place. One should become a scientist or philosopher and conduct research into spiritual knowledge, recognizing that spiritual knowledge is permanent, whereas material knowledge ends with the death of the body. So here Prabhupada is allowing us, we want to become a scientist or philosopher, very good, but conduct research in spiritual knowledge. That should be the only purpose. So become a PhD in physics or astronomy or in religion to preach Krishna consciousness, to share Krishna consciousness and find the absolute truth. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick pause here. Let's see, just want to make sure. I think this here. Okay, perfect. In modern society, even a boy thinks himself self-sufficient. So this is about the culture of knowledge, and pays no respect to elderly men due to the wrong type of education being imparted in our universities. Boys all over the world are giving their elders headaches. The Sri Isopanisad very strongly warns that the culture of nescience is different from that of knowledge. The universities are, so to speak, centers of nescience only. The university students today are not given instructions in the regulated principles of brahmacharya, celibate student life, nor do they have any faith in any scriptural injunctions. So we practically see this, like we accept it as part of life now. But I mean, students today and students 20, 30 years ago, such a difference. Like it's so sad, actually. You go to the university and there's no culture of respect left. There's no culture of abstinence left. There's no culture of any type of behavior. Like no one can tell anyone like you should, behave nicely. You can just do whatever you want, be as rude as you like, be as, um, as um, what's the word that I'm looking for? As uh, just free spirit as you like, and and insult every principle of decency in the world, and it's okay because even philosophers today say that our ancient society, it valued virtue, it taught virtue, that it's good to be a virtuous person. Modern society and modern ethics, their main principle is just freedom. Just be free. Every person has freedom. Freedom is a very good principle, but freedom has to be connected with virtue. And Prabhupada here in the Isopanisad is saying the first principle of virtue is offering respect to elders. And when we lose that, then who can teach the next generation? Who can inspire the next generation? And this is the main teaching of the Ramayana. We see just recently we were hearing the Ramayana. And Srila Prabhupada said that by hearing the Ramayana, by reading and hearing the Ramayana, one can free one's heart from envy. Because we get so inspired when we read the Ramayana. This is why Ramayana was so popular all over India, more than any other book, more than the Bhagavad Gita even, more than even Krishna's teachings, because we are on that level where we need that training, right? And we see that Lord Ram is being so unjustly treated by Kaikai and Dashrath, who has to, he's bound by rules. Yet he never criticizes Kaikai. He says in the Ramayana, he says, she has given us so much love. So the fact that she is being so cruel to us now must be the will of providence. The fact that the switch has come, it must be the will of providence that there's some purpose behind this. So let me just accept it, go to the forest. And indeed, then Prabhupada says that because of her, what's her conniving of the whole thing, Lord Ram becomes famous all over the world as the killer of Ravana, right? As the destroyer of Ravana. He only went and fought the battle of Lanka and destroyed Ravana and became world famous, universe famous, because of Kaikai's, actions. And so it was the will of providence, in fact. It was the will of providence, because otherwise, if he was an Ayodhya perfect king, there's been so many perfect kings. Lord Ram would have been remembered as a perfect king. But he becomes world famous because of Kaikai's his thing. Same thing with Dhruva Maharaj. So he tells Lakshman, who's very angry and just wants to go and attack Kaikai, and even his father for going along with her boons. He tells him that no, we should be very enthusiastic to go to the forest and give the kingdom to Bharat. It's so much nicer to live in the forest with the sages. Who wants to be a king and deal with all the this and that and all this thing? He shows that actually he was never envious of Bharat, who's younger than him, of his stepmother, who's envious of him, of his, mantra, of the lady who's conniving, because the devotee is so respectful to the elders. He wants to glorify the elders. And this culture is very important for devotees. Our Krishna consciousness, our surrender to Krishna does not preclude us from living this life as an exemplary life and following the example of Lord Ramachandra, because it is in fact that life that becomes our service to the Lord, and that life that actually inspires people to become devotees. When they see that the devotee walks his talk, the devotee actually practices spiritual knowledge. The modern society is that as soon as there's some disturbance given by some elder, you put them in a nursing home. The modern society is, it's all about me, and I need my own control and becoming master of everyone and everything. But spiritual life is, I can take the humble role. I can be in the submissive role. So this is the now mantra 10 purport, and then we are done for today. Last slide. What is the conclusion? Sri Isopanisad as authorized scripture. This mantra states that the instructions of Vidya, knowledge, must be acquired from a dhira. A dhira is one who is not disturbed by material illusion. No one can be undisturbed unless he is perfectly spiritually realized, at which time one neither hankers nor laments for anything. Adhira realizes that the material body and mind he has acquired by chance through material association are but foreign elements. Therefore, he simply makes the best use of a bad bargain. One can become a dhira only by submissively hearing from a bona fide spiritual master. Arjuna, for example, became a dhira by submissively hearing from Lord Krishna, the personality of God in himself. Thus, the perfect disciple must be like Arjuna, and the spiritual master must be as good as the Lord himself. This is the process of learning Vidya knowledge from the Dhira, the undisturbed. So just by hearing the Isopanishad and doing this Bhakti Shastri, we can become Dhiras. And it's true, eventually it sinks in and we become less and less interested in material life, more and more enthusiastic about spiritual life. And this is by the culture of knowledge. That's why it's not just knowledge, because we may read something, it's in our head, and when we forget, culture of knowledge means we're reading it all the time. We're absorbing ourselves, like daily, weekly at least. This is a culture of knowledge. Living the spiritual knowledge means thinking of it, discussing it, acting on it, and practicing it. So we'll stop here. If there's comments, questions, we covered a lot. Sorry, I went on a very long discussion today. Vijay Nrsinga Prabhu. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the class. Um, just a thought that, on like the text 9, that we should understand both, or text 9, but both avidya and vidya simultaneously. Is it right to think that it's like how we can only appreciate love when we've suffered through hatred or seen hatred, or um, um, what
Mm. Yes. So that
we
that
can
is
only
often.
understand suffering or bliss when we've gone through suffering.
Mm.
And that same way, we can only understand true spiritual knowledge if we know what is nescience. Is that right to think like that, or is that two separate streams?
No, very nice, Prabhu. This is a really wonderful question because this is the key. What um, we don't have to experience it, but we need to understand it. So in all of your examples, like we can't always experience everything. That's the thing in this world. Like Krishna says in the Bhagavatam that one who is a Naishtik brahmachari, the brahmacharis, the lifelong brahmacharis, they reside in the heart of the Lord because the Lord is so happy with their sacrifice. It's not easy, right? Lifelong to become celibate, we just say, okay, but they go through so much internal practice, struggle to lead that life. Now, they may never experience the material love, and they don't need to, but they understand it through the scriptures. They read it in the Bhagavatam. So this is why the Bhagavatam is giving the lives of not pure devotees completely, right? Like Urvashi and what's his name? Yati? Or no, not Yati. Pururava and Urvashi. And they're having this, material love affair, and the Bhagavatam is describing it. And then the Bhagavatam shows the result of it, that Pururava literally loses his mind and becomes so miserable, and then finally attains liberation. So they could have just described the liberation part, that he comes to the Lord and does that, but they describe the material part also so that we can deeply understand it. So yes, by experiencing, but also we can experience through the eyes of the scriptures. We don't actually have to experience it. And that's why Prabhupada, the last slide, he was saying we can become dhira by hearing, just by connecting and hearing with the pure devotee and the scriptures, we can understand both of them. Yes. Did that fully cover it, or you have another part to your question?
No, that covered it. So it's basically about understanding it. You don't have to experience it, but to understand it, understand the bad, you appreciate the good.
Yes. Understanding it, observing it, recognizing it, and seeing, practically seeing the result of it, like observing it in a general sense, like, okay, I don't know the details of family life, but they observe, okay, we see that people are unhappy in family life, and what is the result of material attachment, they can practically see. So yes, thank you. Rashmi Mataji. Sorry, Sojanya had a question. Sojanya, do you want to go?
Yeah, Guruji, I think most of the part is already covered by the other Prabhuji.
Okay.
But I also have a fear or a comment or a statement.
Mm.
So after seeing all those 16 points, which are very true, right? Is it even possible in this whole life for me to infuse all those 16 points in me? And is it possible to get a Sangha who supports this kind of, thoughts and all? Is it even possible in my whole life?
Yes. Yes. No, this is such a good question. Oh my gosh. This is this is the essence or the conclusion. Like they say, what are the action items? So this is now the action part. Yes. And this is the Sangha for us to do that. Our reading of the scriptures, our practice. And Prabhupada gave us that solution in the last slide, that by regularly hearing Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, reading it ourselves, hearing, and then applying it, we will reach those things. We won't reach those things, like you're saying, by maybe individually trying to, at every moment, trying to apply it, because that's too hard. But we can reach it by engaging in the process of devotional life that leads us to that goal. So those who are on that level, they, through their own example and their own experience, and based on the scriptures, have given us a process that will work, that has worked for hundreds of people, thousands of people. And if we follow that process, we get the goal. So those who have all these qualities, they've said, if you chant 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra every day, if you read Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, if you associate with devotees, like you're going to the temple on Sundays, if you eat Krishna Prasadam, you will get all of these qualities one by one by one. So we have to intentionally try to develop them, and we also have to engage in the process. And Krishna says two things in chapter 6: through practice and through detachment, we will attain that goal. Yes, it won't come overnight, but it'll come quicker than we think. It's also not so difficult. It's our desire to engage in the process. Because Krishna says in the Gita that as soon as we engage in the process, then he says what? This is the part of the Chatur Shloki Gita, the essence. Who knows what Krishna says? When we attempt to engage in the process, what mystical thing happens? What important thing happens? Chatur Shloki Gita, Krishna tells us.
Yeah. Thank you, Guruji.
No, someone can give the answer. Just unmute, give the answer. What does Krishna do when we try to engage in the process?
He gives knowledge.
He helps.
Sorry. Go.
Tesham satatayuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami. That's
Yes,
the one, right, Prabhuji?
yes, that's the one. The Dadami Buddhi Yoga.
Yena mamopayanti te.
That He says that I, from within the heart, will guide that devotee closer to me. So right now, the path seems very difficult and muggy, and how we can reach it. But Krishna, as soon as we try, like the little sparrow, then Krishna will give us the guidance how to reach it. So we just have to think of the next step. Think, okay, what is my goal? My next goal is to chant 16 rounds perfectly every day, like consistently, without fail every single day. We do that, Krishna will do the rest. Krishna will then clarify the next step for us. He will make the path clear for us to move forward. Then once we are there, we think, okay, what is the next step? I want to, do them early in the morning. I want to read 20 minutes of Gita every day. Okay, we reach that step. Then Krishna clarifies should be our next step. And like this, but it all happens in sadhu sangha, or the association of devotees. Hence, it can be over Zoom, it can be in person, but hence we need to associate at least once a week with devotees. We need to take guidance from some devotees. And in this way, we can make very rapid progress. We've been given this. Krishna's giving it to us for free. That's why he took the effort to speak the whole Gita. If it was not possible, why would he speak the Gita and make such an effort? So he's speaking it only for us. Yes. Thank you. Nice question.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Rashmi Mataji?
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji, for another very insightful class. So one of the points in the same mantra 10 was detecting subtle impersonal tendencies in our bhakti. And I thought that was so powerful. I feel sometimes it just creeps in. So I'll just give an example. A couple of days ago, I had a root canal. It was a pretty painful one because it was my molar tooth. But during the procedure, I just found myself I started chanting, And but after that, when I was walking out, I did wonder. I was reflecting on that. I was wondering if I was really remembering Krishna, or was I just using it as a way to get relief from pain, like a spiritual anesthesia, if you will. And it just, I guess I never thought about it in terms of impersonal at that time, but now it makes me, I'm thinking like that now. So I guess my question is, how do we recognize that? How do we recognize and refine that tendency so that remembrance, it becomes more about Krishna himself than what he can do for us, I guess, if that makes sense?
Yes. As we progress in bhakti, we become more and more personal. Our relationship with Krishna becomes more and more personal. So that happens in advancement. But in the meantime, we should always chant. So your response during the dentist experience was very good. In any situation, we should never give up chanting Krishna's holy name. And by chanting more and more, we become more and more personal. Now, a few things that can be very quickly help us become more personal to your question. What are some specific things? Bhaktivinoda Thakur has a very nice song, Shuddha Bhakata Charana Renu, Bhajan Anukulana. And in that, he says that festivals are the mother of devotion. Festivals are a very nice way to connect personally with Krishna. We can say, oh, today is Krishna's appearance. Today is Radharani's appearance. Today is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance. So they're actual people. They have appearances. For the Goswamis and the devotees, not for Krishna, but there's also disappearances. And then we are asking these persons, please give me the guidance. So in this song, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that festivals are the mother of devotion, just like Radhashtami came. And many of us had a similar experience that due to Radhashtami, we had to read and glorify about Srimati Radharani. And like actually, there's a little connection that was made that wasn't there before. So we have so many festivals. So it's not just like once a year. Okay, no, we have literally festivals every week, right, in Krishna consciousness. We should use those festivals as opportunities to connect with Krishna personally. And we should use Ekadashi, special days when Krishna is very merciful, to connect with him. Of course, just by hearing and chanting. Again, it comes back to hearing. Hearing is the Swarup Shakti of chanting. The more we hear about Krishna, the more we become personally attached to him, and it affects our chanting. Just by that, of course, we get more connected. And that's, the daily personalism. But yeah, especially festivals are very nice. So Charu Radharani Mataji?
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I have a confusion. I mean, like whoever, like whenever any devotee or comes, they always say that, everybody should preach. So when when we read just now, the half knowledge is worst. And so how should we take it? Like, because, yeah, many devotees, like, we don't have much knowledge about it, like, uh, so how should we take it, like when anybody says that everybody should preach, because everybody gets so happy and excited that, oh yes, we can preach, we can preach.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, this is Lord Chaitanya's order, Yare Dekhe Tara Kaho Krishna Upadesh, Amar Agya Hoy Hoy Guru Desh. So all of us cannot become very, very clearly, all of us cannot become a Diksha Guru. So what is Lord Chaitanya saying? That all of us can become a guru. Means a teacher to others. And number one way that we teach is through our example. Right? Like we see many, many powerful preachers in this movement and very advanced souls. Their classes are very simple. They're not actually very amazing or learned. They don't know so many verses, but people are so attracted to them by who they are. Right? They're so pure in their being and in their nature. They just love them because among all things, one may be an amazing speaker and people get very affected by deep spiritual knowledge. But of all things, people see the character more than anything else. The character of the person, how they actually behave in their day-to-day life, how they interact with others, their humility. So being a preacher, the number one thing is our example. And then we preach, everyone can preach to people that they connect with. So to our children, we're preaching to our children, we're preaching to family members, we're preaching to neighbors. So preaching also doesn't mean the stereotypical that, okay, someone who's giving class, someone who's distributing books. These things we should do for sure, eventually. But preaching also is sometimes the deepest preaching is through personal connection and through in small circles in our own communities and families, the change that we bring. So a person who's making nice prasadam and giving it to their family or to their friends, and then giving them some spiritual knowledge along with that is doing amazing preaching. When Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj was preaching to the scientists, many different devotees, Prabhupada wanted scientific preaching. They were doing different types of preaching. And Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj's main preaching was to bring them and feed them prasadam. Because he understood that the scientists, I mean, intellectually, it's like never ending. You talk to them, this argument, that argument. You give them Krishna prasadam, and they're happy as a child. So yes, we all can preach. That's why we all must preach. Okay, Bhadra Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the wonderful class as always. Just to further the point that Rashmi Mataji was making, that how do we remember Krishna all the time? So from my experience, I feel that whatever devotional service we are performing, to a great degree, it's out of fear. And the fear is that if I don't do any devotional service, or if I don't worship Krishna, something bad might happen. So we do it out of fear. And the reason we don't remember or are not able to remember Krishna all the time is because we don't have that love for Krishna. Because, the acharyas say that when you have true love for Krishna, you will cry for Krishna. So unless until we don't cry for Krishna, it itself proves that we don't have that true love. The love that a mother has for her children. She will find out whether the child is crying because he is hungry or he's just crying to throw a tantrum. So we are not actually connecting ourselves in a true manner. That's why we tend to forget Krishna when we get involved in certain other activities. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yes, Prabhu, it's a really nice point and another inspiration, like another way to make us more personal with Krishna. Prabhupada says in the Krishna book, we must learn the art to cry for Krishna. So yes, so that's really nice. Thank you. Yes. So we will read these books and cry for Krishna. That please, that relates also to Saujanya's question. That please develop these qualities in me. Please give me attachment to you. And Arjun asked the same question that she asked. That Arjun says to Krishna, I cannot do this. It's not possible. And then Krishna responds, yes, through practice and detachment. And that's probably what you're saying. If we're actually crying for Krishna, then we won't forget him from time to time like we do. Thank you. Haripriya, please take us to the final destination.
Yeah, sure. I was not able to write much today, but yeah, I tried to write the most of the point. So in mantra 9, we saw that it explains two people who lack knowledge. Those who are ignorant and those who are engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. And one who neglects spiritual knowledge shall be covered by darkness and ignorance, especially those who impede such knowledge. And the killer of soul, Atmaha, is materially ignorant and materially knowledgeable. And when the people who do not surrender to Krishna, like according to Bhagavad Gita, are the fool lowest among men, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion and outright atheists. And ignorance and pseudo knowledge is compared to a wolf in disguise as a sheep. And the wall is like you compared that pseudo knowledge and knowledge to that thing, that wall room thing, that the walls in a room is ignorance, and the glass is pseudo knowledge, and the open door is knowledge. A bird trying to get out from the window is likely wasting time and energy, and therefore not even attempt to find the open door. And then you told us about mantra 10, that and also before that you told us about nationalism and modern universities, that they do not pretend, but they are not spiritual. And mantra 10 says that how explains that true knowledge brings a different result than either of these. It also emphasizes the need to take guidance of this true spiritual master. And if you give like you explain that Bhagavad Gita, that shlok verses from Bhagavad Gita. So you told them in the Bhagavatam that when we give Bhagavatam to anyone, we will be sure that we will go back to Godhead. And my last point was that we know that in the human society, no one is being taught any respect. Like if there's a young person, he will not pay his obeisances to the older, his father or grandfather. So thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Wonderful summary. Thank you everyone for joining and for your wonderful attention.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the
Hare
good
Krishna.
class.
Thank you,
Excellent
Prabhu.
class. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.